brave steps forward where you get a peek of what becoming your true self means, sounds like, and looks like. I'm your host, Carlin E. Tapia, coach, speaker, educator, and certified practitioner. I'll put more info of my work and what I do in the show notes. Feel free to contact us. My team would love to schedule a guest on my podcast. I have exciting plans for this, and I am ready to serve you. This podcast is designed to help you break free from fear or toxic stress and grow into the most confident, empowered version of yourself. If you're feeling stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed, you've come to the right place. Hi, Susan. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm super excited to have you as a guest on my podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We were just talking about your business and that you're an author. I would like to know more about that. How did you get started on that journey? And yeah, what's it like to be an author?
That last part's a little tough. I will say that being an author, a lot of people don't consider that as being a small business, but we really are. And when I say we, other authors, especially smaller authors, not your big names so much. We produce our product. We promote our product. We have to handle the finances and make decisions based on how we're doing and all the things that you would do in a small mom and pop store or on an online business. We're doing it. So I've been writing probably since I could hold a pencil. It's just my parents were avid readers. I became an avid reader, and from there it just morphed into telling stories and sharing stories. I've been writing for publication for about 15 years now, not counting when I worked in journalism. I had a 20-year career in journalism as a reporter and an editor. But now I write fiction, which, depending on who you talk to, there's not much difference between the two at this moment.
Okay.
So,
and where are you located?
I am located in Northwest Georgia in Gordon County. Right now I'm sitting in Bartow County because that's where I work.
Okay. Awesome. I've wanted to publish my own book, and I am trying to decide whether I want to self-publish or publish with companies. Why did you decide to go with your own company?
I have a publisher. It's Colorful Crow Publishing in Ellijay, Georgia, and I've been with them. I've got 2 books out with them, and I'm working on a third. You can self-publish. There's all sorts of help out there for that, and it's become a viable means of getting your work in print. And one of the things I enjoy most about the writing community and being a part of that community is helping new writers or aspiring writers find what works best for them. Unfortunately, it is an industry where, trying to think of how to phrase this nicely, there are companies and people who take advantage of people's hopes and dreams, and they're scam artists. And a lot of new writers, unfortunately, fall victim to them. And I try to help writers identify those companies and identify the legit hybrid publishers and traditional mom and pop publishers if they're not aiming for the big publishing houses. And I would gladly answer any questions you have about that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess I've never thought of that. I am like well connected with people. I make sure I ask a lot of questions. So I didn't even think about that, about scams.
Yeah.
But that's really good to just be aware of that.
Yeah. And I never want to be the reason someone gives up on their dream of getting published. I want them to have a good experience. But there's companies out there that's, oh, you give us some astronomically ridiculous payment and you're going to get 5,000 books. Statistically, you're not going to sell 5,000 books ever, and you will not recoup your money on that. But people fall for it all the time, and it's frustrating for me because there are better ways. And I just love helping people avoid those pitfalls and find what works for them.
Yeah, that's good information. I know that my audience appreciates that. I know some people that have been clients, or just by talking to them, they also want to write something, publish something. And so that's good for them to know. And I just want to know a little bit more about what gets you now to write fiction. Does that take a lot of creativity? Because I think for me, it would be really easy to write my stories, my life. But when it comes to fiction writing, that's just another level.
No, I totally understand. I'm just the opposite. I look back at my life and I'm like, no one wants to hear about this. But I can take portions of my life and create characters around it and create other events in it and turn it into a good story. But memoirs are huge. They sell really well. To me, they're harder to write. I can create interesting stories, whereas I don't see where I've experienced amazing and incredible things. And that could just be a confidence level on my part, because I look at my life and I'm like, dang, I've done a lot. So,
Yeah. If you ever need a coach, that's what I specialize in: confidence and resilience. But that's amazing that you can just create events and characters. And is that just like in your mind that you just see the world that way?
I do. And I was a little worried at one point, and I talked to my neurologist because everyone's creative process is different. And mine usually starts, I tell people I hear voices, and then I get the look, and I'm like, but I know they're not real. But I'll hear a snippet of conversation in my head, and then my brain just automatically goes to who's talking. And that becomes the character development, and where are they? That builds on the setting, and why are they having this conversation? And that becomes plot to me. And let's see, I've got 5 books published. Every one of them started out like that, where I just hear a conversation and I'm like, that's weird. What's going on here? And then I dive down that rabbit hole, and before I know it, I have 200-300 pages written.
That's amazing. I have this thing where I make things into something really funny, but my brain doesn't do that, of like developing events. But I've never shared this, so I'm just happy to just mention it with you because I feel comfortable. But I sometimes, I just don't take things as seriously, because since I'm a coach and a therapist in training with the state, right? I just see human beings and I just see them separately from what they're doing. I see their actions, their behaviors, their emotions. And it's super funny. Sometimes I'm just watching something and someone would react differently, like they would get upset, but I think it's funny. I'm like, I'm sorry, your reaction was funny.
No, I totally understand that. And now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, she's probably going to go back to her therapist class and be like, I have a case study for y'all.
No, actually, people who do suffer from schizophrenia, they are very successful because they have these voices,
Mhm.
and they can either be helpers or it could be something that is not helping them.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not, I'm exposed to a lot of different things in my work. So I'm not like, oh my God. But no, I do believe in that creative process. I do believe that God talks to us too. So
Oh,
you're
yeah.
a believer, right?
Yes, I am a believer.
So is your experience like vivid with God?
It is. And I was thinking about us talking today, so I was writing some notes down and things like that. And I tell you, I've, God's just moved in such an incredible way several times in my life. And I've really focused the last year on intentional prayers for wisdom and discernment. And the Bible tells us he gives wisdom freely and liberally. And I can just almost hear, when a situation comes up and I'm like, this is how we're going to approach this, because he's giving me that wisdom. And just watching him move. And I think I told you that I was a stroke survivor.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Almost 11 years ago, at age 42, I had a stroke. No one really thinks about a stroke at 42. I managed to convince my husband and myself that it was just a really weird migraine. But thankfully, his wisdom and discernment, he 24 hours later took me to a hospital and found out that, yeah, I'd had not a hemiplegic, there I go again, a blockage
Mm-hmm.
in my brain. And minutes are critical when you have that kind of event. And it was 24 hours before I received medical care. By all accounts, I should have had worse deficits than what I have. But he had mercy on me.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I remember laying in the hospital and the doctor comes in and he tells my husband, your wife's had a stroke. And my first thought was, oh, that's pretty bad. But God's going to take care of me. And I have my husband right here and he's going to take care of me. And it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
And it did. It really did. My deficits are minimal. I have some word retrieval issues, things like that, but horrible short-term memory. I wouldn't say horrible, it's getting better. And I'd actually thought that was the end of my writing career. Um, because there was nothing creative there. My brain had to rebuild all the filters. My brain had to learn how to function with part of it being dead, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things had to be rewired. And I was like, I've published 3 books. If the ship has sailed, I cannot complain. I I was satisfied. And then probably about 4 years after my stroke, I had this idea that I just couldn't get out of my head. And I'm like, this feels like a story. I work as a speech therapist. That's how I pay the bills. So all my recovery efforts have been to get me back to working in that field. And I was like, but this feels like a good fiction story. So I started writing it, typing it up, emailed it to a friend of mine, and was like, what do you think? Just give me your honest opinion, yes or no. And she responded with, I'll give you an answer after I read more. I was like, oh, I guess I better write some more. And we kept up that little game until basically I had a manuscript. Now, the funny thing is, the manuscript did not get published, but one of the stories that came from it is my book called The Disposable, and it's part of my Redeemed series. I had to write a book in order to get an actual publishable book, and it's available at my website, www.smkirkland.com. But that was the catalyst, and I've just felt God moving and opening my imagination and opening doors, because I was never going to get it published. But then I was like, let me join a critique group and see what other writers say about it. And that's how I became connected with Colorful Crow Publishing. They had a critique group, and they were like, yeah, this needs to be published. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. That I can see how like the enemy would want to attack and just use that against you, like your brain, just that part being dead, and how God can redeem that. I myself have experienced that because I used to have PTSD, like chronic PTSD. So I believe in God redeeming your brain and new neural pathways developing. So I'm just so glad that you have that hope and that you are a believer. And so I can't wait to touch your books to get my hands on one.
I tell you, I can't imagine facing something as crippling as PTSD. I've had it with trauma in my life, and I did have PTSD from the stroke because it happened while I was asleep. Going to sleep became very unsettling for me. Almost literal panic attacks. But you have to sleep, you have to rest, but I couldn't imagine facing any of this without the Lord.
Yeah. Do you still struggling? Are you still struggling to go to sleep?
No.
How did you heal that?
The funny thing is, where my brain damage is,
Yeah.
it makes me go to sleep.
Oh.
So, but in the early days, I would start to fall asleep, and you know how when I guess it's that fall dreaming where you just suddenly shudder and you're wide awake.
Yeah.
I would go through that multiple times at night before my brain would just say, "Nope, you're done," and I would go to sleep. But I don't have that worry. Whatever happens, and if I don't make it, I know where I'm going, and if I do make it, God's got a purpose for it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you have that hope. So, what's your best-selling book? What is the name of it?
Higher Honor was my first book, and it's probably been my bestseller. It's the story of four friends their senior year at a military college, and their faith and their friendships tested when one of them is sexually assaulted, and they have to navigate this unfortunately very real world experience and figure out where God is in all of this. And when they find out that the assailant is one of their closest friends, it just threatens to tear the whole group apart.
I can't wait to read that one because I have some past pain about that in my own life.
And that's a pain I can connect with, and I understand it because I've been there too. And they say your first book is always the most autobiographical, and it really was. That kind of trauma, I believe, without a doubt, I will die on this hill that sexual trauma is Satan's nuclear weapon. And because it damages so much of your soul, whether it was physically traumatic or whatever. It damages you spiritually, and it's a pain I believe that only Jesus can touch and heal.
Yeah, I agree. It's something I feel like it's the worst pain that someone can live through, because your voice is taken away, your choice is taken away, like you're just maltreated
Yeah.
to the core.
And so Higher Honor deals with military sexual assault or sexual trauma. I don't know what they're calling it these days. The Disposable and the whole Redeemed series focuses on human trafficking, and it's the story of a young man who's been trafficked by a gang. He escapes. He's homeless and drug addicted, but he escapes to protect his daughter. And the gang comes after him because they don't want him telling his story and causing problems for them. And they know the easiest way to shut him up is to get his daughter. The series follows that battle as he works to overcome his addiction, and I call it general fiction written from a Christian perspective, but it's not as evangelical as Higher Honor was. As everyone's different. And I believe God moves in a way to capture your heart and capture your love that works for your situation. So in The Disposable, it didn't make sense to me that we have this young man who has been victimized horribly from a young age to meet friends who are believers, who genuinely love him and help him, and he suddenly is saved and his life's perfect. Life does not work that way. When it does work that way, that is wonderful. And when it happens, we should definitely praise and give glory to God. But typically, there's a journey involved. And so God works on the periphery. And as the series progresses, it moves in closer and closer. And you realize God's been at work through the whole series, even though in The Disposable it's a little bit more discreet than it is in the final book.
Okay. That's wonderful. Would I find that like at Mardell's, at Hobby Lobby? Where would I find your book?
It's available on my website,
Okay.
smkirkland.com. It is also available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And through Colorful Crow Publishing. So there's several avenues.
Okay.
For it.
Awesome. I assume that through your website is the best way.
That is the way I prefer. And I'm just going to be honest, that is where I make a little bit more off of it. Amazon is great. Everyone has it. And if people want to buy my books there, I am not going to discourage you. It is a business, and I like to get paid.
Yeah.
Not going to lie about it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with wanting or needing money. Yeah. It's a tool that we all need to exchange for other resources. So
yes,
I loved just knowing you better and about your stories and your books, and I love connecting with you. And so if there's any last piece of advice you would give to my audience, what would you say?
I'm sure you have some listeners who are wondering if they can write. And I will tell you, all you got to do is get the words on paper. Don't worry about spelling, grammar. Don't worry. don't try to make it perfect out of the gate. That's what the editing process is for. And so many writers get chained down by wanting to create this perfect, beautiful masterpiece as soon as they sit down. And don't take that pressure off yourself. Put the words on paper. You can clean it up later and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey of writing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I can just see people just writing without, yeah, without just the freedom of just writing and then putting it together like a puzzle. So, yeah.
And that's actually how I write. I love authors who can outline every chapter from beginning to end and write from beginning to end. I've tried that, created so much anxiety in me that I was just like, I can't do this. So I might write a scene toward the end of my book, then a scene toward the beginning, a scene in the middle. And usually I write 15, 20, 30 scenes. And then I sit down and go, okay, this goes toward the end, this goes toward the beginning, and then I organize it.
I love it. I love how brains are different. My brain would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I have a creative entrepreneur brain and I am not linear at all. Thank you so much. And that's it. That's a wrap, you guys. Thank you so much for being here today and for giving me the privilege to speak over your life and for you receiving the gift of growth. Remember, every step you take forward, no matter how small or big, you are truly moving forward to who you're truly meant to be. Embrace the journey because the process of becoming is just as powerful as the destination. And in today's episode, if something sparked in you, a question, anything, a goal, an idea, hold on to that. Let it be the nudge you need to take brave steps forward toward the life that's calling you. You don't have to have it all figured out to start. You just need to take that next step. And I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. Until next time, keep going. Hey, and do me a favor, share this episode with one friend or on social media. Let's bring more awareness to taking brave steps forward together.